Today I'm joined by Kate. Kate's the founder and owner of Eat and Mess Bakery, which is an award-winning artisan bakery and workshop specializing in seasonally inspired produce, baked fresh to order with sourced and foraged local ingredients. Not only that, Kate is also a director of Whole School Meals, which is a social enterprise who feeds school children with using high quality local fresh ingredients in homemade food. So welcome, Kate.
Hi, thanks for having me.
That's okay. Look, it sounds as though you've got your time full. Before this, you were saying you've got children, you've got been a director of Whole School Meals, and obviously your own business in Eat and Mess Bakery. So yeah, obviously a very busy person. But Kate, tell us a little bit more about your business.
Thank you for the intro. That was a really nice description of it. My background is I trained as a baker and a pastry chef a long time ago now, probably about 15 years ago. And after working in the industry for a while, I decided to set it up on my own for various reasons. And haven't really looked back ever since. It's so far it's still going okay. But I wanted to set up the business primarily because my real passion was working with local and seasonal ingredients. It was at the time and it still is now. And obviously, I think as time has gone on, it's become more of a buzzword, which is brilliant. People are far more aware about what they're putting in their mouths, being a bit more selective and actively choosing to go with something that is kind of sourced locally with ingredients that they'll recognize. And that's kind of everything that it was founded on and still is. So in terms of the ingredients that we use in the bakery and the flavors that inspire us, we've got the classics, obviously, because everyone is always going to love a chocolate cake. But we also like to introduce different flavors and recipes throughout the year, which are inspired by the things that we are seeing around us. I live on the Kent coast, so I'm lucky enough to have lots of kind of beach related ingredients. I mean, obviously as well, now everywhere I look, elderflower blossom is, well, yeah, the parks, the hedgerows, or even on the beach in some places. So that's that's the plan for this weekend. Some of the specials for this weekend, I'm going to be getting the elderflower cordial out. So yeah, it's just looking around us and using our local resources really to kind of create the best quality products we can.
Love that. It sounds great, and yeah, certainly those elderflower ingredients that you're looking sound lovely. I'm going to have to make a trip down to visit you and taste some of those. So let's go back, Kate, into you said about setting up your business. So because I think I read somewhere that you did a degree in English, was that right at Cambridge University?
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you always want to be a business owner, or did that come later?
I don't think it was ever as conscious as wanting to be a business owner. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. And actually, in retrospect, looking back, both of my parents were self-employed. My father was a farmer. I'm from Yorkshire originally. So he was a farmer up in Yorkshire. My mother still runs her own business. And actually, both of my siblings run their own businesses as well. I don't know if that kind of I'm kind of extrapolating, but I'm assuming it must have rubbed off slightly. It was just kind of there in the background that, yeah, find what you're passionate about and do it. Don't have to wait for somebody else to do it first and work for them. To be perfectly honest, I think I would probably be a terrible employee now as well. But I always, in terms of kind of the food, I'd always had a job for as long as I can remember, from kind of 14, and it had always been in food, but it had never really been on the table that I would do it as a full-on career, if that made sense. It was more just kind of a Saturday job working in kitchens and bakeries. And then obviously I went to Cambridge and I got my degree, which was incredible. You know, what an experience and a brilliant thing to have. And then I moved into publishing in homes and interiors specialities. But I was always, it was just kind of always in the back of my mind. In my spare time, I was still obsessed with food and baking in particular. And then after a few years, I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to go and give it a go. So I moved to San Francisco and enrolled there at the Baking Institute and got my diploma and, you know, had a great time. It was really hard work, but it was really fun as well. And I kind of always thought, well, we'll just see where it goes. And, you know, if it doesn't pan out, I'll just go back to what I was doing. I've obviously got that foundation. But like I say, so far I'm still here. Still going well.
Well, as they say, if you do something you enjoy, you never work a day in your life. So
Yeah.
I love that. And okay, so I think I'm right in saying you sort of started your business about 12 years ago. Have I got that about right? Yeah.
Thinking about this the other day, it kind of merges. And actually, I started the business, it will be just over 12 years ago, because it coincided with me becoming pregnant with my oldest child.
Wow.
So that's why I know. I had to think back the other day and I was like, no, it's 12 years ago, because I think I was about 6 months pregnant at the time.
So an interesting time to start up your own business whilst you're pregnant with your first child as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a reactive response, maybe, at the time. I mean, actually, it's interesting, you know, in the news a couple of months ago, there was a lot of stuff going on about kind of the role of women in kitchens. It was particularly then, as well as still is, but it was a very male dominated industry. It wasn't particularly receptive to certainly young women. There were far few women in that career then as well. And basically, I was kind of having to hide the fact I was pregnant, because in one of the jobs I was working at, because at the time I was working kind of freelancing for a couple of different events companies as a pastry chef, and one of them I did tell, and it kind of didn't go very well, and I kind of started getting sidelined because you can't lift and you can't do this and you can't do that, which I could, but it was, yeah. So I was kind of getting to the point, I was like, do you know, it had already been in my head, but I was just like, do you know what? No, I'm going to do it myself then.
Okay, no, great. And then it's often sort of times like that that just, you know, events that trigger things. And
Yeah,
I'm
it had been bubbling away kind of in the back of my head for a while, and I just got to the point where I was like, just going to do it. And my now husband was obviously very supportive, because I don't think he quite knew what he was going to let himself in for. But yeah, and actually it has turned out to be the best thing. It was really hard, and it still continues to be hard doing the juggle. But actually, I think it would have been harder if I had continued working for somebody else, trying to juggle parenting as well.
Absolutely. And so thinking about when when you started the business, has it been everything you expected it to be when you started out?
No.
Okay.
No.
Tell me more.
I don't think anybody, I don't know if you could identify with this, but obviously when you have an idea and a plan, and I had been in the industry and I kind of saw the ins and outs, and I'd made a conscious effort as well when I was working for other people to try and get involved in areas which I thought would actively help me in the future to run a business. So I did have a bit of an idea, but I don't think there's any substitute to when it's the buck stops with you, stops, and in the middle, it's you. And the all-consuming nature of it, I don't think anybody could probably really describe until you're in it. Yeah. And you know, when I started something, I see these memes sometimes. It's like, you know, the dream to have like a cute bakery. It's also a bookshop and also a coffee shop. And you know, you have all these ideas and you start thinking about, oh, it'll look like this and do this. And then obviously that's great, but that's literally the end result. You've got to do all of this other stuff to get to that point. And it's stuff that you might hate and be really bad at. Like I hate doing accounting, and I am so scatty. I'm always about the ideas and the beauty of it all, and sitting down in front of my computer and doing admin and accounts and payroll is literally the last thing I want to do, or comparing the price of butter, you know. but it's so important, and you just have to kind of, well, if you don't learn to do it, you probably won't get very far, I would say.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. I think you've got that. Well, when you start out on in business, quite often you don't have a choice. You just have to do everything. You have to do in your industry, do the baking and those sort of things. But as you say, you have to do the sales, the marketing, the finance, the
Yeah, yeah,
all of those sort of things that go with it. And then as you start to grow and get clearer, then you can start thinking about, okay, how do I outsource these things? How do I employ people to
yeah,
do these things that I don't like or I'm not as good at as other people? But that's difficult in the beginning when you perhaps haven't got the finances to support employing people or outsourcing and
yeah.
things. So,
And I think so you're not always aware when you first start something. Well, for me anyway, I originally went into this industry because I was passionate about it, like you mentioned earlier, and I still continue to be. But just being passionate about something, it's not enough to actually make it a sustainable career, because and I couldn't foresee then that I would need to also, when I first started, like, Instagram wasn't a massive thing. I can't remember if it was a thing actually. Anyway, but social media is now probably like well, it is. It's the number one marketing thing. It's actually sales, marketing, all of it. It hinges on social media now, and that was something that I could never have foreseen when I was, thinking, oh, I'm going to start making cakes and sell them. Sorry, my cat's just come into shot. So, the stuff that you can't foresee, that you can't anticipate, and then also, like you say, recognizing actually, I'm just not that good at that.
yeah.
Someone else is far better, and actually, me saying move this resource and this, column of finances and pay that person who's really good at it is kind of the grown up thing to do to make sure you can keep going on and up, I think.
There's a saying that I love, which is always employ people that are better than you.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
if somebody's better than you at accounting, well, yeah, employ somebody that's better than you. If somebody, employ somebody that's better than you at marketing or sales or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah, because and particularly as I say, if it's something we all like different things. You said you're more creative and that sort of thing. Well, yeah, outsource or employ people so that you can focus on what you're good at. Other people love accounting and finance and those sort of things, so let them do that. Let them be great at those sort of things, what they're good at. So really great observation there. So what would you say is the biggest challenge that you've faced in your time as a business owner, Kate?
I think growth has been the biggest challenge. Again, starting as just one person, me, making cakes and selling them, and then you obviously start to have plans for growth, but it is the most challenging thing. And I would say in the last 3 years particularly, maybe specific mention to the last 12 months, it's become even more difficult because of just rising costs of everything. So you're trying to grow a business, take on staff, make sure that they have got everything that they need, but also, the rising costs of ingredients, which are just insane. And to do all of that and still make an income and still try and grow as well to follow your business plan, I would say that is the main challenge.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I mean, you mentioned there a business plan. How important do you think it is for a business to have a business plan?
I think I think it's really important. I think it also has to be, and this is something I would say I've learned again in the last few years, I think having a business plan as a structure is really important, but I think it's something that has to be a template which is editable. I think that going, this is it, and why is it, when something starts changing or going wrong, then you'll just get in a tangle about it. I think it has to be a blueprint to which we kind of refer back to and go, well, hang on, this avenue isn't working anymore, or this, it's not looking as strong as we thought it might be. we need to kind of deviate that slightly, or focus on this other angle. So I think it's a really important thing just to give you a structure of where you're going, but I think it is also something that needs to be checked in on regularly.
Yeah, absolutely great. I mean, you can have described it sort of better, to be honest. I think it's that pathway to think, like, this is where we want to go, but constant review, constantly adapting and changing it. To, I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier about, the growth and in social media and how that's affected marketing. Well, I'm sure when people sort of set out on their business plans 12 years ago, they didn't build into it that there's going to be this massive growth in social media. And
Yeah.
so you have to adapt and change, but it gives you that structure to look at and say, what's changed based on what my plan was and what I'm working on? What do I need to do differently? What do I need to keep doing? What do I need to stop doing? So yeah, I love it. And look, you mentioned there about, your biggest challenge has been growth. If you could wave a magic wand and solve one challenge in that area, what would it be?
Reducing the price of ingredients back to where they were. Inflation. Yeah, I mean, that has been the kind of the biggest challenge. I mean, realistically, that's been the biggest challenge in my business of late. Just making sure that we are not passing on the cost to the customer too much. I mean, there's an inevitability at some point. You have to look at the price that you're charging and go, we can't suck this up anymore. We're going to suck it up as much as we can, but we do have to add a little bit on. But I think also, as long as you communicate effectively, and that's where social media plays a really big part as well. I think communicating effectively with your customers and kind of showing them that you're not taking the piss. I'm not just racking up the prices because I want, pots of gold to stare at the end of the day. It's literally going into making sure that I've got happy staff and that I can afford to buy the ingredients that I think are really important to making a quality product. Because that's the other thing. You can go, okay, well, I'll just stop using this local supplier and I will go to a large supermarket or wholesaler, and it does affect the quality. And well, for me, that's a bit of a non-negotiable. It's what I started, the founding principle of what I started. It's what I believe in, and I still believe it makes such a difference to the end product. So it's, yeah, that kind of, I'd say, that would be the thing I would change if we could take the prices back to, I don't know, 2020.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you sort of said there is that actually you want to stick to your underlying sort of values and principles of using good quality ingredients, and that's what you're sort of founded on, and then linked into that in terms of, as you were sort of saying, helping to educate people in terms of why, for instance, your products might be that little bit more expensive than a cheap sort of packet bought cake from a big supermarket.
Yeah.
Because of the value that they're getting, the better quality that they're getting, because we don't always realize that. Sometimes people will go, well, that's cheaper than that, so I'll go for the cheapest one.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the difference between the two is the key.
You're totally right. And actually, just, to kind of take it slightly wider on that point, but, in the news of the last week or two, obviously, there's been a lot of conversations about American meat, and everyone's getting in a tiz about it, rightly so. But the point is, we're talking about that, but go into any supermarket at any time and just look at the back of the ingredients, and if you go and pick up a cake, even somewhere, actually I did it the end of the week, I was looking, I was in Marks and Spencer, so a higher end supermarket, some would argue. The back of their cake, one of their cakes, which, by the way, was pretty much the same price as one that we sell, which is what really surprised me. But and they claim to have only recognizable ingredient stuff, but the ingredients list was like this, and they've got all of this stuff in it, and that, like I say, that's one of the better ones. At least there was no palm oil and stuff. But it's about educating people to look at the back of labels, no matter what product it is, actually. But also recognize that if you are buying it from a small producer, the chances are they're not going to put loads of rubbish in it. And you will recognize the ingredients that are on there.
And I think the other point that you've actually highlighted there is the value of a brand.
Yeah.
Actually, because you refer to Marks and Spencers, being a more sort of one of the upper markets, sort of supermarkets, if we want to refer
Yeah.
to that. And actually, they've built a lot into their brand around trust, and we are that sort of slightly better brand. But actually, so what that's enabled them to do is actually charge more for actually what is a fairly basic sort of product.
Yeah, it's a factory produced product, which is also, who knows how many of the supermarkets they're shared with as well.
Look, Kate, there's by the way, I mean, I could talk to you for ages about all of this, but there's one final question I'd like to ask, and I'd like to ask everybody that's kind enough to join me on this discussion, which is, what is the best advice that you would give to an 18-year-old you?
The best advice I would give is believe yourself. It sounds so trite as I'm saying it, but it's true. Honestly, believe yourself. Don't be afraid to ask other people, like we were discussing earlier. Ask as many questions as you can, get as much experience, and just be really open to as many experiences as possible, because you do not know how that will come to help you in the future. And also, I would say as well, just like keep with the conviction, know that you're doing the right thing, and listen to yourself, and do not get distracted by other people's viewpoints and fear.
Great advice, great advice. I love that. And believe in yourself, ask others, be open to experiences. Yeah, believe in yourself. I really like that. So thank you for sharing those things and everything else you've shared on today's discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. And sharing more about your business, but also your journey as well, Kate. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really nice to chat.